Hello, everybody, and thanks for listening. So, I came across an article. It's entitled College Republicans' Patriot Prayer Rally Disrupted by Counter Protesters. And so, I thought this was interesting because it goes along with a lot of the things that have been happening more recently. And what I've noticed is there is a lot of people that, just in driving, during the week. I'm noticing a lot of people at random getting pulled over by officers, and I don't necessarily think they're police officers. They look like ICE officers. And I've noticed there's a lot of different attitudes that, people are like really seem more cautious, more suspicious, more fearful driving because of getting pulled over and seeing random people being pulled over, and they're looking at license plates and they're starting to do things a little more frequent as more so than what people had thought. And I guess people really didn't realize that this was serious, that they're really serious. And I guess it doesn't hit home till it starts happening to people that people know. Excuse me for a minute there. So I'm starting to notice that more people are noticing that there is a lot of effects that are coming out of this administration. And more recently, there's this article here that talks about a rally that was on a college campus, and it's entitled Republican Patriot Prayer Rally Disrupted by Counter Protesters. So it goes on to say this article was written by Bradford Betts in Seattle Fox News. So here in this photo, you see what is the American flag that was torn to pieces. A torn to pieces of American flag lie on the ground at the University of Washington, February the 10th, 2018. Q13 Fox Seattle. 5 people were arrested as fights broke out. At least one American flag was burned Saturday after a college Republican rally in Seattle that drew counter-protesters. College Republicans at the University of Washington had invited members of Patriot Prayer, a group in Vancouver, Washington, to speak in the University Red Square for a freedom rally, the Seattle Times reported. The goals were to bring conservatives together and promote free speech rights. College Republican President Chevy Swanson told the Times. As the event got underway, supporters chanted, USA, USA. And then what followed was signs included one that read, "We died for liberty, not socialism." So here on Twitter, someone posted a photo of the counter protesters. So 5 were arrested. This was in the Seattle Times. American flags were burned, and the police officers used bicycle barricades and pepper spray to separate demonstrators at the University of Washington Red Square. And so the 5 were arrested as the Trump supporters and counter protesters rallied at the University of Washington. 5 people were arrested at the University of Washington Red Square on Saturday during a much anticipated rally called by the College Republican and the Vancouver, a group in Vancouver, which was a prayer group. And so I find that ironic, especially as to what's going on in this time. So it goes on to read that, but more than 1,000 counter protesters showed up to oppose this event. I learned that they thought that my vote was a hate crime. And this is coming from a college Republican and a protester that was for Donald Trump and that voted for Donald Trump. Her name is Catherine Townsend. Catherine Townsend, who said she voted for Donald Trump in 2016. I learned that they thought my vote was a hate crime. Some counter-protesters voiced their opinion. We're here to fight back against the far right and fascism on our campus, one counter-protester stated. So police was on the move as the fights broke out, and the oppositional crowd moves in front of the Suzelo Library. It was a very peaceful, it started off as a very peaceful on Patriot's prayer side, but then later, as the counter-protesters ascended on the event, that's when there was an eruption of a bit of chaos. So you see here where there are officers here, and they're moving in on the event. And so it doesn't really show as much going on right here, but there are other videos and other footage that shows what happened during the event. So I'm not a fan of the president, and these people are fans, a counter-protester was stating. So I want to come out here and say that this is not okay and what they're doing is not okay. After several skirmishes broke out, police responded by pepper spray, and the University of Washington police said those arrested were charged with disorderly conduct. No officers were injured, they said. The university officials were worried about the potential for violence at the rally, and the school's president had warned students to avoid that area. So I guess it's a common area for multiple different people, different walks of life to come through there. And so this was reported through the Associated Press, contributed to the report, and through the Seattle Times, and written by, like, once again, Bradford Betts, Fox News. So I notice that here, even in Los Angeles, this was Seattle, but even here in Los Angeles, there's been a lot of pulling over by the police, a lot of looking at license plates. If, you know, the officer pulls you over and you don't have the right answers, or if something looks suspicious about that individual, then you'll see people that are being randomly handcuffed. It doesn't look, they're officers, but they don't look like, all of them don't look like LAPD necessarily. And so I've been noticing that as well, that the way they're dressed is a little bit different than LAPD officers. And so I'm assuming that they are ICE officers. And so they're a whole nother different department than regular street officers of LAPD. But I think LAPD pulls people over if there's drugs and alcohol involved and some kind of criminal element attached to the person that they're pulling over. And then when they find something else is not right, then that's when if they don't have the proper paperwork to show that they have a license to drive, or they have papers to live in California, in the US, then that's when consequences will ensue. And so I've been seeing a lot of that happening more recently. It's been happening more frequently. It's primarily during the weekdays. On the weekends, I would suspect it happens, but in particular spots that are, like, I guess, you know, hot spots for people that they would assume were hang out, or they're, you know, congregating, and they do like maybe some random searches. I believe that has been going on. There's been a lot of deportations here in Los Angeles. And so for the ones who aren't being deported, people, that are being affected. If you're a low income, if you're poor, you could be white, you could be black, you could be from any background. If you're low on the low, you don't make a lot of money or whatever. The social programs have been cut. There's been people who lived in inner city areas, they're being pushed out or having to move a little further out just so they can find affordable housing. So a lot of things have been taking place more recently, and so people are now feeling the brunt of the effects of all of this. So it's affecting everybody in some kind of way. Um, so with that being said, I don't know how the other cities except Seattle is showing their, what they're going through. Um, but I think it's happening everywhere that, you know, this administration is over. And, mostly the cities are really feeling the brunt of everything. And I think the cities that before prior were claiming they were sanctuary cities, I think the reason why California and Los Angeles is feeling it more so is because it was claiming that it was a sanctuary state and that it was trying to, pull away and become its own entity, basically, and separate. And I don't think that flew very, very well with this administration, and I don't think that passed. And there have been multiple lawsuits um, against the administration's laws. So there's been lawsuits against laws and other laws that have been counter laws against laws that have been recently, you know, put on the forefront now that have affected a lot of people. And there's been back and forth fighting, back and forth debates on political issues on all levels. And so I think people now, I guess maybe they didn't really think that this would affect certain people, if they go on their normal way or everyday life, they don't feel like things are going to happen to them until something gets cut. Maybe they receive a check from some program and now it's not as plentiful as it used to be. Um, they're receiving some kind of subsidy program and now they have to be restricted to a certain area, or they not making as much money and now they're forced to move so that they can live somewhere that's affordable. It's a lot of things that are going on more recently that have been happening that have been affecting a lot of people, and I think people are now feeling the brunt of this. And then even local businesses, like today I did go into the Crenshaw area and I just wanted to look around. And for the longest, they've been working on this Metrolink system. And so the streets are kind of buckled because they're doing this project where they're working on the railway system. And I believe there might be something underground, like a new subway system. It kind of reminds me of New York, like a new version of New York. And I think it's making it a little more accessible for people who live further out. But it could also be problematic because, even like subways, if you look at some of the subways in New York, there's more crime down there. Homeless people are down there. So they might even have to like increase security for this new railway system because I'm sure it's going to be a hotbed for crime, muggings, things like that. I'm just saying, because usually that, whenever you have something like that, it brings on that type of element. And with what's going on right now, where people are being pushed away or there's a lot more homeless population, the growth of that alone, that's like it's warm down there. It's, out of the rain. And I could see homeless people using that as an area to set up, you know, um, a homeless encampment. Of course, that may not work effectively if they're being constantly shooed away or ticketed, or they have a high level of security, and then two, they may have security much more for that system because of the terrorism factor. because that will also bring on that issue as well. That'll be more of an issue in the Los Angeles area. And I think the reason why the deportations and all that stuff is such a big deal out here is because it was stated that the governor was saying that this was going to be a sanctuary state. This is a sanctuary state, and that they were pulling away. And like I said in a previous video, that by them saying that was pretty much putting a bullseye on the situation on this state. And then this would be the first one they would target, and they would stop at nothing and hit hard and heavy. And that's what they've been doing. And this administration is running this country like a business. And, with regular businesses, like, when they require something of you, and if you don't do it, then, you're going to feel the brunt of it. You're going to feel the consequences of whatever it is, the requirement they ask of you. If you're not meeting those requirements, then this is what happened. They lay it out for you. Here's what you got to do. If you want to become a citizen, if you want to stay here, if you want to partake in this program, this and this is what you got to do. And if you don't meet these, requirements, then this is what's going to happen. This and this and this is what's going to happen. And so this is the way this administration is running things. There's no empathy and sympathy involved in it. And so every day, on the regular, on the daily, you'll see these articles that pop up talking about all these people who were good citizens and they were good people, and they're using all of like the best of the best people, and they're not talking about the ones who have criminal history or criminal backgrounds that they've pulled over. They found out they have, like, on multiple occasions have been deported, and they somehow found their way back, and they're committing some kind of illegal act. A lot of that is kind of being swept aside, and then they put some of the people they would claim to be the model type of people, in terms of on the positive side, that should not be deported, but those people are being pulled out. And then unfortunately, that's what happens when you're in this type of life here. This administration is not showing any empathy, and it's not stopping no time soon. Unfortunately, I see that this is not going to be at a standstill. And there's been multiple lawsuits, debates back and forth. And I guess just people just didn't think that this was coming. And I don't know if people were sleeping or what. But unfortunately, people, those of you who live in any of these cities, Seattle, New York, Los Angeles, California, somewhere in a really bustling city where this kind of thing is taking place, it's like, I'm sure you're full aware of what is going on, and you somehow somebody, or you've seen something that has unusually uh happen more regular than what it used to. And it's showing that, okay, this thing is coming all out in full circle. It's like in real time, right in our face. And so you can't evade this issue anymore. And so for those who, I guess, they thought, oh, it's not going to affect me. And now they're feeling it. And so this is the sentiment of the counter protesters that showed up at the rally. And, like they said here, they said only 5 people were arrested, but I would think there were more that were roughed up and arrested than the 5. This is just what they reported, so you have to be aware of these, these outlets like this. They make it seem like we only arrested only 5, and 5 could be, you know, just the most, that they could say that was in the forefront, that was caught on video. But the other people who were arrested, they're not going to really talk about. So I would think there would be a lot more, and they're not saying. But you see the protesters holding a sign saying no wall, no raids, no war, resist the Trump administration or resist Trump. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. So this does not surprise me one bit at all. But the heat is on, people. The heat is on and it is in full throttle. And so for those people who thought this wasn't going to happen to them, they're not being affected, well, here it is in our faces. And no matter where you turn and look, it is happening. Every day, something points to this issue, and it just doesn't seem like it's stopping anytime soon. So I'm going to cut this video short, but thanks for listening. And I will get back on another video because there was some other topic that I wanted to talk about that I thought was pretty intriguing. And I think people need to hear about that one. I was amazed, but not amazed, amazed and amazed. It's weird. But anyway, yeah, so people, it is happening. We are in full throttle of this and with no signs of stopping. And I don't see any remorse. I don't see anybody, you know, is coming forward except those that are involved in it. And so this is like a real deal here. And this is happening. And I do have to say this in closing that I feel like in the coming months, just within the coming weeks, there's going to be a lot of more changes that are going to be made. There's going to be a shift, even in society, like in city areas that are facing these harsh, laws, stricter laws on these type of issues. I feel like there's going to be a shift, and I've been saying that, and it just seems like it's history repeating itself. If you read about some of the things that have happened in other places and, law and government and some of the things that have happened to other groups where they were pushed out or either they're moved further away or they're totally, exiled from places that they've always known. This is not something that is uncommon. And so I just think that not many people thought this was going to happen. And so I feel like really people now should realize that, okay, these are possibilities that this could happen to anyone. And even if you're not carted out of your country, you can be pushed away and priced out of a neighborhood. And so this stuff is real. And well, so that I will get back with you with another video. And like I said, more protests. I really don't see this stopping anytime soon. I think actually more will escalate as a result of all of this. And I feel like the climate in the air in terms of the people's attitudes, there's a lot of fear. There's violence that could ensue, more protests, even a violent protest. But anyway, thanks for listening.